So Jason, what is your background in automotive journalism?
Okay, so this all started 4 years ago. I had an internship with very little to do. And so at this internship, where basically I was given 40 hours a week to do whatever I wanted, I decided that playing games on the computer got old. So I started researching cars, not necessarily cars, researching everything engineering related, how things work. And I would go home and I would make videos after work on whatever I researched during the day and how it worked. So some of my older videos, I have how jet skis work, I have how scuba regulators work, some other nonsense like that. And so it started kind of just being this channel on how engineering things work. That's why it's called Engineering Explained, which doesn't really relate to cars. And so that was the original idea. And then I'm kind of passionate about cars, so that kind of took over. So over the years, over 4 years, it's kind of grown. And then about a year ago, I started adding in car reviews to that. So now I'll do how things work on Wednesday, and then I'll typically do some sort of car review on Sunday. And that's kind of the format that I've been following for about a year now. And it's been like kind of a slow growing process and just steady and, growth as I go along and new opportunities opening up. I was working as a test engineer for a forklift company, Heister and Yale forklifts, for about 2 years. I wasn't a test engineer for all of those 2 years, but worked as an engineer there. And then I quit that last August. And then YouTube is what I do full time, just like you now.
How were you able to quickly amass 300,000+ subscribers and how long? How long did it take you?
Well, 300,000 didn't happen that long ago, so that would be around, I guess I would say, around 4 years that it took to get there. And there was never a spike as far as like, oh, this was the one video that made it. I have 20-some million views total, but no one video has 1 million views. So it's all dispersed across it. One of the big helps, it always helps to work with other people and then find out what works well with that. So for me personally, one of the big things that's helped has been working with a website called Car Throttle. It's a UK-based car platform, very social media friendly, very youth friendly, fits my demographic well and adds a lot to it. So I've been writing articles for them monthly, and that's also brought in a lot of growth. But I think it all comes down to, and I say this a lot, people are lazy. I'm lazy. You've run 6 Ironmen, so you're less lazy than most. But ultimately, there's some laziness in you.
Yeah.
And if you can learn something faster, if there's something that you can learn in a quicker manner than doing it on your own, you'll take that path. And so what my goal has always been with my channel is that in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it may be that my video length is, you will learn a lot about a specific subject that you otherwise couldn't from other forms. If you go out and research it on your own, which is what I do, it takes many, many hours to get the real facts. And so I take that out for the viewer. They don't have to do those many hours. They watch my one video. Hopefully it's accurate. I do my best to make sure it's accurate. And then all of a sudden, maybe they were interested in cars, but not interested enough to watch or read, 4 hours of material to figure out how something works. But if it's 5-minute video, yeah, they're willing to watch it, and it's more interesting. So that's kind of been my whole goal, is cater to laziness. People want it in as short and concise of a manner as possible. Keep the vocabulary simple, and that's kind of been the logic that I go into it with.
I think the simplicity of your videos and the production of it is mind-blowing when you compare to how popular they are. And this is no discredit to you at all, because you use a whiteboard and you use colored markers and you just do diagrams. And I know, like you said, it takes you hours of research to simplify something in a short period of time. And you're like a professor when it comes to engineering, because you're able to explain to the masses in the simplest terms how things work. Does it blow your mind at all? You're using a whiteboard.
It's you bring up a great point, and the production value is incredibly low, and only this year have I finally invested in a microphone that cost $20, nonetheless, but I invested in it, and so it's cool to me, and I've always kind of been this no risk kind of person, and that's it's okay for some people and not for others, and basically I'm not willing to take risks. You don't see risk taken by me, and so I've invested, how much have I invested if you look at where my channel started? Well, I spent $30 on a whiteboard, I spent $5 on some markers, and I already had a video camera because I liked filming stuff.
Yeah.
And so my investment was $40, and that's what I started with. And for probably half a year to a year, that was my total investment. And then I got a new camera for my birthday. You know, that was like the step up. And I used that until not that long ago. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, if I have 200,000 people watching this, maybe I should have something better than just like the home camcorder and its internal mic. And so I've slowly started investing in it. But it is crazy that someone with no investment and no resources other than a whiteboard and some markers can create their own audience. And I think it kind of just speaks of how powerful the internet is, because it gives everybody a voice, regardless of like where you're at and how much you're willing to invest. So it is very cool. I think it's pretty awesome how successful it's been with how little financial requirement it's had.
You hear the term YouTuber now, and people are making a living as YouTubers because they do things that are on the cheap or as simple and, you know, in your bedroom type of productions. You know, all these beauty channels with these gals who are just talking directly to the camera, or a personality channel that's maybe comedy driven or just random thoughts. It's incredible how some of these talents are more popular than some of the celebrities in the world. Right. And yet we can make a living at it, which blows me away, that we can do something that we enjoy, that we don't have to go to an office per se.
Right.
And now you're able to transition into an independent contractor, I guess, with YouTube, but you're your own boss.
Right.
And 5 years ago, would you have thought that for yourself?
No, absolutely not. And I think like what it comes down to is a couple things, and it's that, first of all, regular people are so much easier to relate to for an audience versus just hearing it from a company. So if a company is saying something and it's just like, oh yeah, they get paid to say that, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. Versus if it's someone who's living a lifestyle similar to your own, and you see them and this is their experience and this is how their take on things, you relate to it and it's of much more value to you. And then also on that is that you and I, we drive these cars and we give our own experience, versus if you know, say whatever company, Chrysler, Ford, you know, Honda, whatever, if they create a video on this content, they're the ones creating it. Of course that has a positive message. Of course the message, you know, benefits them in as high a way as possible, and there's no negativity.
It's filtered.
Right. It's completely filtered and it's completely biased. Even if it's not. Even if the person making it is, these are my genuine experiences, and I happen to work for Toyota. And, you know, that's typically not going to be the case regardless, but, you know, there is no way around that. And so if you're a third party and you're just giving your own honest opinion, you know, it's so much more valuable to a consumer looking at, you know, hey, I'm thinking about getting this car. I went on, you know, so-and-so's website and it says all this, but what's it like to drive? And you can't get that from the manufacturer. You can't go straight to Ford and say, hey, what's it like to drive Mustang? And it's like, well, it's fast. And it's like, okay, great. But, you know, I need it from someone who isn't working for you. And I think that's kind of what it adds. And it's suddenly so many other people have a voice in this.
Tell me about the Engineering Explained audience. Who are they and what do they like?
They're males.
Yeah.
There's very few females. Unfortunately, I think it'd be great if there was more. But 18 to 34 male, what are they interested in? I think it's a definitely more technical, how things work, versus, you know, just anybody can look at a spec sheet and, you know, but if you look at that spec sheet, can you draw comparisons? Can you show why something is beneficial? When you look under the hood, can you see, is this an intelligent way to set things up? So people who are looking for a little bit more as far as how things work. And then, you know, and I get a lot of students too. So a lot of people who are in like Formula SAE, which is like a student competition where you build track cars, and they're trying to use the knowledge that they're learning from the channel and apply it to the car that they're building. So I get a lot of that as well. A lot of students, a lot of education, a lot of people kind of looking for more detail into the world of how things work.
That's, you know, when you say it like that, I feel like it must be an enormous amount of responsibility on your part to get it right, because people are going to you to learn how things work.
Yes.
I personally, early on in my automotive career, that's how I found you, is because I see you on the whiteboard and I want to know how a clutch works, or I want to know the difference between a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder, or certain types of gasolines. There's a lot of responsibility on your part to be the deliverer of information.
Right. And yeah, and hopefully it doesn't come across as like, oh, because he said it, it's true, because I definitely make mistakes. My goal has always been that if you explain something clear enough, if you explain something so it gets down to basic truths that we can all agree on, you shouldn't have to doubt it. You shouldn't have to think, oh, maybe he's not right because of this and this. But if I can explain, down to the very limit, like if I tell you right now, a lock differential can send 100% of the torque to one of the wheels, but both wheels can be spinning at the same speed. A lot of people just don't get that. It's not intuitive. Why would two wheels be spinning at the same speed and one has more torque? But if you can show, with math, here's the friction on one tire, here's the friction on the other, and prove, hey, look, here's how much is going to it, people are going to believe you, and they're going to take your statement as more credible. And so I think it's all about kind of trying to boil it down to, these are universal truths. We all know 2 + 2 is 4, and because we all know 2 + 2 is 4, we can build on that. And so that's kind of the approach I try to take with it. I make mistakes. There's wrong things out there. So what I end up doing is, I'll have in the video description, note,
yes,
I was wrong here. Here's the corrections. And so when people comment and say, hey, this is wrong, I'll say, hey, check out the video description. You're correct. I was wrong. And here's the facts. And here's some more links so you can learn more about it. So yeah. It does feel like a lot of responsibility. I think the benefit of that too, though, is that it forces me to do my research.
Yeah.
Like initially I could kind of get away with, I'll just put this out. I'm not totally sure of myself. But now it's like, if I'm not completely sure, I'll get backlash in about 20 minutes after I post the video. So you definitely have to be cautious, use credible sources, and boil it down to basic truths that you can build up from.
What I find is incredible is that in writing reports or articles, it's easy to write a lot. It's hard to write a little and still get the same message across. And you able to condense things down to 5 or 7 minutes when you had to do hours of research, that seems to be the real challenge on simplifying how something complicated works.
Yeah.
And is it because you see things differently?
I think it's kind of like what I was saying is boiling it down to universal truths, because a lot of people will write a lot of things about a certain subject, and how many of those things that they say can you validate? So I work my way through all the different claims and say, okay, is there anything that validates this? Yes, no. If there's not, it's not worth bringing up. So it's once again just boiling everything down to, I know this to be true, and I can build this onto that fact, and I can build this onto that fact. All of these align with that logical flow, so I'm going to include all of that information in the video. And it's definitely been, I think writing has helped a lot for me personally, because I now write for Car Throttle as far as figuring out the thought process behind it, because usually I just I put stuff on a whiteboard and then I just turn on the camera and record, and then I just talk like there was a person next to me that I'm trying to teach how this works. And there's not really a process there. Versus writing an article, you have to lay it out in a manner that forces you to think, okay, what's the first thing you have to tell that person?
Yeah.
Because that's what they read first. And so a lot of that for me has been, you break it down into 2 sections. The first section is, what are all the components? And you just list them out and say what they are. Flywheel, torque converter, transmission, clutch, whatever. And then second, what's the process? So you start from the very beginning. What's the first input? Well, a person pushes their foot on the accelerator pedal. That turns the throttle body.
Yeah.
That allows air to flow into the engine.
Very logical, very
right.
in orderly.
The air flows into the engine, so the ECM system injects fuel. The piston, pulls that air in and then compresses it, and you just follow through the steps one by one.
Yeah.
And so those are the 2 steps. What are all the parts? And then what's the logical order that they work? And once you do that, I think that's really the process behind all of it.
I tell people all the time that they can go to my YouTube channel. I have playlists dedicated to brands and also years, and then also some of their special features. Kind of rattle off some of your playlists that you have.
Yeah, so I actually have one, and it's a playlist of playlists, so to speak, where it's called logically ordered playlists.
Okay.
And it's whenever someone's new and they come in and they say, okay, you have 300 videos, where do I start? And so I have these playlists, and it'll start with engines. That's the first playlist, and it kind of dives into how engines work. But the playlists are ordered in a manner in that if you start at the beginning, you won't be lost. If you start halfway through, you might say, oh, I don't know how that thing works. I have to go back to this earlier video. And so I've ordered them in a manner where you can go in, engines, suspensions is a playlist, transmissions, clutches is a playlist, differentials, things like that. And so it's all put in an order that makes sense to me, at least, that you can go in and you're only going to be referencing videos you've already seen if you watch it in that order.
So it builds upon the previous chapter almost.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually on my website too, which is old and archaic and kind of out of touch with reality at this point, but if you go on there, howdoesthecarwork.com, there's a section that's called lessons, and there's lessons 1 through 10, and there's 10 simple lessons where I've got videos ordered, and I kind of talk you through them in between each video. Okay, now that you've learned this is what we're going to go into next, and everything's kind of ordered in a manner that makes it easy to learn for the person who's just coming into it.
So why aren't you at a university or state college teaching this?
That's a great question too, and I think it's because, I like making videos.
Yeah.
The audience is greater than if I were at a university. Though I have done some talks at university. I've gone to Portland Community College a couple times and done an intro to engineering course twice and just talked about mechanical engineering. But I think I like the massive interaction of everyone on planet Earth can find this content. Anyone on planet Earth can send me comments, and I love the interaction of that. And so I'm always in the comments, like literally every day. I'm going to community comments and just reading through and answering people's questions, talking with people who have comments, things like that. So I love the community behind it. YouTube gets a bad rep for having a lot of dumb, useless, a lot of bickering in the comment section, which is very true. It does happen. But if you create content that promotes education, I think you can get a lot of educational discussions that fall in with that, and I love that. And I learn from it myself so much. I learn so much from the comments because I'll post a video with all my thoughts on a particular subject, and then somebody else will come in with their thoughts on it. You know, maybe they've worked with this in their own experience, and they have input to add, and I'm learning stuff from them that I otherwise never would have known. And so I think that's really cool.
I find a lot of pride when I see in the comment section users interacting with each other.
Yeah.
They create their own relationships, or they have their own dialogue that's hopefully my video started.
Right.
And they're not there criticizing me or what I wear or what I said or whatever it is. Or they're talking about the car.
Right.
Or they're talking about their experiences.
I have this car.
Yes.
This is what I've experienced.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they go back and forth. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's good to have that. And so it's kind of a community where people, they're there to learn about a specific topic, and they can learn about it more in the comments and with discussion. And
you may or may not realize this, but YouTube is a social media platform.
Yeah.
Not you, but people listening or watching. Talk about your segue into doing car reviews and how this experience as teaching people how cars work has developed you into a more well-rounded journalist.
Absolutely. So car reviews was never really something I thought I was going to be doing. Like growing up, it was like, hey, Motor Trend, those guys have the best jobs in the world. I didn't expect to be doing it. I just thought I was going to stay on a whiteboard forever. Thankfully, that is only half of what I do now. I love it, but I'd like to get out in the real world and experience things too. And I think the benefit is huge, and getting into it was kind of a challenge. You know, you have to have an audience and things like that and show that you're going to have a unique perspective of it. So mine was always going to be like, well, I'm going to get a little bit more into the engineering, get a little bit more technical with my reviews, talk about some things that you may not
while
see.
Staying true to your original plan, right?
Right, exactly. And so I think some of the things, though, like for example, people love to hate on CVT transmissions, continuously variable transmissions. A lot of people don't like them, and I've always thought they were brilliant, and so I've never understood why do people hate on these so much. Because I've always thought they're brilliant, and I think a lot of it is an emotional thing where you don't have the sound experience, you don't have the gear shift experience, so now they're kind of reinventing that with the CVT. But one of the things that I found really cool about driving cars with the CVT, which I otherwise wouldn't have known, is that shifting gears in a CVT transmission, for the ones that have manual gear selection, like a lot of the manufacturers will put in paddle shifters and they'll have set ratios. CVTs tend to do it much better, much smoother, much quicker than planetary-based automatic gearboxes. So if you get a regular car that says 6-speed automatic transmission, typically that's going to be a planetary automatic gearbox. If you get something that says CVT, you know it's a CVT. And what I've noticed is, and this has been true for every single CVT transmission I've had, in fact, one of the best transmissions I've had in, remarkably, was the Toyota Corolla. I mean, it's a 20 grand car, and it was beautiful how well that CVT worked. The gear shifts are so fast. Another really cool thing that they did is when you floor it, In an automatic, a lot of times, you'll get that downshift, or it won't quite build up the revs, and you've got to wait for it to get to those high RPMs. In this CVT, in the Toyota, if you put it in sport mode, you floor it, immediately went to 5,000 RPM. And that's like what it was made to do. And it just stays in those high RPMs because CVTs can do that. They can just stay in a specific RPM range and just keep the power delivery as high as possible. And so these are things that I otherwise, honestly, I just wouldn't have known unless I had driven them myself and felt it. And felt that, CVT transmissions, when they shift very smoothly and very quickly. And automatic planetaries typically don't. And so my debate will always be in the comment sections of my video, get the CVT. If you're offered that between that and an automatic, you want the CVT. Yeah. Now, the initial ones that came out, some of them had problems, with reliability. They had a spongy feel to the accelerator pedal. And, that's been addressed. They're changing it. It's adapting. It's a new technology. But at the same point, it was cool to actually get in one and then learn how it works from a feel perspective rather than just on a whiteboard perspective.
How does your review style of a car differ than others that they may see on YouTube? Or I don't want to compare it to mine, but I have a different style completely, but you're coming from the mechanical point of view. Yeah. So how is your style different?
So there's several things I want to do with my reviews. I like to look at serviceability. I like to look at the engine bay and say, does this make sense? Where they've placed everything, where are the service points? Are they easy access? Do they require tools? That's one part. I also do tend to like to get into the suspension and look at it. I do measurements, which I don't ever show in my videos, but I have a big database where I measure, anti-roll bars, exhaust diameters, things like that, and I kind of compare cars like that. And then the final part of it is the driving review itself. So while I'm actually driving it, and I try and get what I think is different about it is a very accurate description of the driving dynamics. And so when you press that throttle pedal, when you press that brake pedal, when you turn the steering wheel, what is it that you feel? How exactly does it feel? And there's a lot of people, who will kind of say like, oh, the steering feedback is poor, and that's the end of the sentence. And so you're left with, well, how is it poor? What does it feel like? So like more recently, I was in a Subaru STI, and this was a viewer's car, actually, who he just said, hey, you want to review my car? So I did that. But for example, while I was in a corner heavy, and there were some tweaks that he had done with his wheel. So I don't know if it was the Subaru itself or the tweaks that had been done aftermarket. But basically, while I was in the corner, if you're really hard into it and you're turning it, the steering wheel never felt set in one angle. So you could move it very easily in a small rotation, and it could just kind of float in this area. And so it didn't feel super confident to me. And I think that's something that people would say like, oh, the steering feel maybe is a little weird. But you got to accurately describe what are you actually feeling, because for the viewer, unless you can accurately describe it, it's kind of meaningless.
But how many of those viewers are shoppers that can use that information in their decision-making process? Are people that technical, in your opinion?
That's a great question. And probably for the most part, not, because there's so many channels out there that do car reviews that are very well received that aren't going to get technical. But on the other hand, there are people who are looking into a car, and I've gotten quite a few comments, which has been surprising to me, of like, hey, my favorite review of the WRX, like, thank you so much for this. Like,
you know your stuff.
Right, yeah. Like, you described it very well, and I appreciate that, and it makes me feel confident going into the test drive.
Yeah.
And I definitely say that to everyone, like, don't base your buying decision on some videos. Like, go drive it.
Sure.
So, and but use those things that you've heard and see if you notice it for yourself, and see if that's something that's going to affect your buying decision.
If someone's going to make a $25,000, $35,000, $50,000 purchase based on my 8-minute video, give me the money. I'll buy you a car. Yeah. I'll keep the difference, because you can't do it based on what I say.
Right.
You have to drive it yourself.
Right.
You have to experience. Again, these are my opinions.
Right, exactly.
I'm not getting paid by the manufacturer, nor are you. These are what our opinions are. This is our education. This is our experience that we're bringing to the table.
Absolutely.
But take it and compare it and contrast with other reviews.
Right, exactly.
Until you drive it.
Yeah.
But I find people are watching. I get regular viewers, regular people who comment. They're not looking to buy that car. They're just curious.
Right.
They just want to
learn.
It. Yeah, they want to learn about it, want to see it. They want to go, oh, that's a cool car, or I want to see what he's up to this week.
Yep.
It's
sure, exactly.
Your personality. That's what a lot of YouTubers are. They're personalities, and this is what they do.
Well, yeah, like recently, actually just yesterday, I put out a video on the Nissan GTR. Majority of my subscribers are not going to be buying a Nissan GTR. Like, that's the reality of it. None of us have 150 grand to drop on a car. But it's fun to watch, you know, it's entertaining material, and there's something you can learn from it too. Like, there's unique things that Nissan has done with that car. Let's say you're an engineer, you know, working in the industry, and you see that, and it's not something you've known of before. You know, that's another take of something to think about.
Yeah.
And so I think there's all kinds of different avenues which you can come from and find value in car reviews.
If I watch a channel, and maybe it's a travel channel, I can live vicariously through that adventurer. Who's trekking through wherever, or a race, or whatever it is, and I can see the same thing for us. Like, oh, what does Jason think behind the wheel of that car? Oh, he went to the track and did this. I mean, both of us went to the Mudfest event earlier this year, and we both have different takes on the cars we drove.
Absolutely.
But they want to ride shotgun with you.
Some of my viewers saw you too. There was one of the videos that you were doing some B-roll in, and I was like, oh, there's Everyman Driver. So I get comments on that video.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, Everyman Driver. Yeah. Cool stuff.
Where is this going for you, and where do you hope it will take you? I mean, for me, there's some selfishness in wanting to do some traveling. You go to these cool places that a brand or manufacturer say, hey, all expenses paid. Go to San Francisco, go to New York, go to LA, you know, go to Hawaii, go overseas. That's kind of a nice perk to what we do. What are you hoping this takes you, and what do you want from it?
You're on the same path that I'm thinking. So I get asked, and actually Car Throttle CEO Adnan Ibrahim, brilliant guy, and he asked me the same thing. You know, what do you want to do with this? And it's like, well, you know, here's the thing. I started making a YouTube channel when I was in college, in a whiteboard in my apartment room, like that. All of my stuff was in one room. Like, that was my one room. It was basically a dorm room. And that's where I started. And now this is what I live off of. Like, this is my career. And like, to go back 4 years and think to myself, if someone were to ask me, hey, where do you want to be in 5 years? I would say, like, oh, I want to be working for myself doing YouTube videos. But like, I wouldn't imagine it to be reality. And like, now that reality has come, like, I don't feel like I need something more. Like, I love what I'm doing, and I would love to continue it. I would love to get cooler content. I would love to get, you know, some of these trips. Like Land Rover did a really cool event that I know some journalists that went to.
Iceland, right?
Yeah, Iceland event with the Land Rover Discovery Sport and things like that. You know, those are like incredible experiences that I would totally love to do. But I'm content where things are at. It's growing, and I just hope to do more cool content-related items.
Yeah, it is fun to share that with everybody else, and they get to see the excitement through you.
Absolutely.
What's one of the most recent car reviews you did? Not the GTR, but what's the most recent car reviews you did? And then what's in the immediate near future?
So just recently, last week, I was in the Chrysler 200. So that's new for 2015. I really like the car for the most part. It's very comfortable. The suspension is great, and it's honestly one of the quietest interiors I've ever been in. So I test with I've got an app on my phone that I do dB levels inside the interior, and it competes almost with the Escalade, and the Escalade's a $100,000 car. I mean, this car is quiet. The one complaint I have about the Chrysler 200 is it's lacking a bit in visibility. Everything's pretty narrow. And so for me, I feel like I'm moving my head around a lot, you know, trying to make sure that I see everything. But I have enjoyed that. Right now, I just got delivered the Subaru XV Crosstrek. I don't have many impressions yet. I just got it today, and I have driven it maybe 6 miles. And coming up, I've got some cool stuff, actually. I'm going to be getting in the new Corvette Z51, so that'll be an awesome one to test out. And then I'm also going to be getting the Mustang EcoBoost in, I believe, in either August or early September, so that'll be also pretty interesting to get in.